There we go.
Welcome to the Golf Podcast Live. I'm your host, Rafael, Kalamat. I'm in Toronto, and as always, we've got Michael Bleackley out in Vancouver. This is episode number 45, brought to you by AR Golf, designers of fine putters, custom clubs. We've got a really special guest today. We've had a number of Golf Channel hosts, anchors, reporters, and today is without a doubt one of our favorites, anchor reporter for the Golf Channel and NBC, over 15 years of sports broadcasting experience, former CBS affiliate for WKNG Orlando. With us today, we have Todd Lewis. Welcome to the show.
Rafael, Michael, thanks for having me.
Absolutely, thank you.
Yeah, we're thrilled to have you. This is a pretty easygoing conversation. We talked before we went on. We love to start with getting our audience get to know our guests. Some people may not know who Todd Lewis is. So tell us how you got started in golf and how you got started in broadcasting. You could take us way back, or you could just go back maybe 20 years or so. But how did this all get started for you with golf and broadcasting?
Well, I went to college. I grew up in rural North Carolina, meaning I grew up on a farm. My family was very modest. But I loved growing up on a farm. You obviously get a good hard work instinct about that. So that was really cool. I was in sports, and interestingly enough, in a weird combination, into music as well. And somehow morphed that athleticism and that creativity together and found journalism to be my calling. And I my parents helped as much as they could, and I helped as well. And I was the first one in my family to go to college. I went locally to UNC Greensboro, which I call the Harvard of Guilford County in North Carolina. And just was determined to do what I'm doing now. I knew, a lot of kids go to college and they're like, I don't know what I want to do. I'm still figuring out my major. And I knew what I wanted to do. And so I focused on that, and I started working at local news stations all across the country. My first job was in Wilmington, North Carolina, making $15,500 a year. Then went to Spokane, Washington, where I fell in love with hockey because the junior hockey team in Spokane at the time was and still is the Spokane Chiefs. Yep. So I fell in love with that, and traveling all across the western part of Canada. And by the way, the head coach of the Spokane Chiefs when I was in Spokane was Mike Babcock.
No way.
So wow. He was quite an intense guy, and still is. Interestingly, he's done some work for NBC, so our paths have crossed there. Then went back to North Carolina to do some TV, and then landed in Orlando, where I was a news anchor and a sports anchor, and kind of ended my tenure there at Golf Channel. Is based in Orlando, and they were kind of keeping an eye out, and I was keeping an eye on them, and then we got together, and 15 years later, I'm still there.
Very cool.
Awesome.
A little bit more into your golf skills, if you can play competitive, are you a good golfer? And Raf and I used to DJ, and I still do occasionally, and that's kind of how we met each other. So maybe elaborate on what you did musically, and then we'll get into the good stuff.
All right, so I'm mediocre at both of those things. First, in regards to golf, I played it since I was 11. And again, getting back to my rural North Carolina roots, I didn't grow up in a country club. I grew up at a club in the country. Yeah. So learned there, and I'm an okay golfer. I'm about an 8 handicap now. I was down to about a 3 or 4 at one point, but yeah. I love the sport. Obviously, who doesn't? It challenges you in so many ways, and I love to play as much as I possibly can. But I travel 26 full weeks a year, and I have a 6-year-old. And when I come home after being on the road and say, "Babe, I'd love to go play some golf," she's like, "Really? So that's kind of tough. As far as my music, I was blessed with a pretty decent voice, and nothing exceptional. But I was in some bands in high school and college, and did.
Very cool.
Yeah, I'm a hell of a karaoke guy. I'll just say that. Great. So that's all I can go.
Okay, there you go.
That's awesome. That's really, thanks for sharing all that, because a lot of the time, we hear you either on the radio or on television, and you're talking, you always golf and you're always asking other people questions. So just flipping the tables and learning about you is fun. The audience gets to know you a little bit. And so let's turn over to the PGA Tour. A lot of stuff going on, not only with the PGA Tour, but with the LIV Tour. But let's start with the PGA Tour. We've got the FedEx St. Jude event. We've got all these great players on the PGA Tour: Scotty Scheffler, Cameron Smith, Sam Burns, Xander Schauffele, Rory McIlroy, Tony Finau, Justin Thomas, just to mention a few at the top. Do you see any of these guys making a turn over to LIV? Or are they really solid on staying with the PGA Tour? What's your thought about that?
Of the guys you mentioned, I would be surprised if they go to LIV. But at this point, nothing is shocking me now. I've heard guys look me in the eye and say, I'm not going, like Bryson DeChambeau and Dustin Johnson and Brooks Koepka, and now we know where they are. But I think of those players that you mentioned, I think that their legacy is more important than the dollars. And it's interesting, I've actually had some conversations with players, and for whatever reason, they've asked my opinion on this, like, what should I do? And I'm not going to disclose any names, but I just tell them, I said, there are two things you have to answer. Number one, if you feel as if you can't consistently compete on the PGA Tour, maybe in a major championship, if you don't feel like you've got a good shot at winning, you don't have that belief on the PGA Tour. And secondly, maybe more importantly, if money is your main motivation, then yeah, you should go. I mean, I think that's the case. But I feel as if, Tom Brady didn't play for money. Michael Jordan didn't play for money. Tiger Woods surely didn't play for money. And I can attest to that for sure. So I feel like money is a byproduct. It's something to consider. I'm not saying that you don't just block it out of the equation, but money shouldn't be the major motivator if you want to be elite. And if you do want to be rich, then yeah, that's a different story. So, it's things you've got to think about. And those guys that you just mentioned, Justin Thomas and Jordan Spieth, Rory McIlroy and Tony Finau and so on, Scotty Scheffler, those guys, they have a different perspective than the ones that have crossed the threshold over the list.
And the money follows. Like all of these guys can chase the dreams, the majors, and they're still going to make some pretty darn good money out there. Right. It might not be the $150 million signing bonus that DJ got, but I'm curious. Will you miss the interviews with like Koepka while DeChambeau's traipsing along the background, and some of the comical things we've seen over the last year or so with that feud? Are you going to miss those types of I guess raucous interviews?
You talking about the viral video that popped out that it wasn't supposed to?
Yes.
Yeah, look, I actually like Bryson and I like Brooks. I think they bring a lot to the game of golf. But obviously they have a different perspective on what motivates them. And even though I've said what I said about who should be playing on the PGA Tour, what you should be thinking about if you're going to consider going to LIV. I mean, I don't begrudge these guys for doing it. It's their choice, but I'm concerned. It's easy to look at these. It's easy to look at a micro right now about how much money you got. But look, I'm in my 50s, and much more than I did in my 30s, I think about my legacy, and I promise you, 15 years from now, this is going to be something they're going to look back and say, was it worth it? They're going to question it. When they may answer it and say, yes, it is. But we're going to have to see how it all plays out. It may play out to be something that it's cohesive. Getting back to your question, yeah, I'll miss those guys. I'll miss talking to them. I think, you mentioned Brooks. Bryson, I mean, he wants to be an innovator. He's always trying to revolutionize things. He's always, his gears are always churning. Brooks is a little bit on the laid back side, but the pro guy, and which
Yeah.
I enjoy. And so yeah, I'll miss all those guys that have made the crossover. I'll see them hopefully at majors, or maybe I won't. I don't know. We're just gonna see how it plays out.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a great point. And by the way, you look pretty great for being in your 50s. Mike and I are respectively 48 years old. You look younger than we do, I think. I got my cap
Actually,
on.
closer to 60. Right. I'm closer to 60 than 50.
Wow.
Yeah, you're really rubbing it in.
But yeah, great point. You've done so many interviews, Todd. It's really interesting. When you think about guys who are characters like Mike talked about, Sergio Garcia, Phil Mickelson, the list goes on, Pat Perez, Brooks Koepka. These guys are sort of like the characters of golf who bring a lot of color to the game. So,
sure.
Of course, there's going to be some wonderful players coming into the game and the PGA Tour. However, my question to you is, some of your favorite interviews. Tell us who you really liked interviewing, or the ones that really stick out for you.
Well, anytime you can put a microphone in front of the greatest player of this generation in Tiger Woods, it's amazing. Probably my most, I'm a guy who doesn't get motivated by fear of failing. Right. I always see things as an opportunity, not an obstacle.
Yeah.
But at the Zozo Championship in 2019, I was on the live broadcast crew in Japan, and Tiger was about to win for the 82nd time on the PGA Tour, which would tie Sam Snead for the all-time record on the PGA Tour as far as wins go. And as soon as the putt dropped, I was the one to interview Tiger, who, by the way, was also the President's Cup captain. And the President's Cup, remember, this was in the fall of 2019. The President's Cup was right around the corner, and he had some captain's picks. So Tiger won. It was an incredible, historic, celebratory moment. And here I am, the first one to interview him. And for the first time in at least since the beginning of my career as a weekend sports anchor at WECT, the NBC affiliate in Wilmington, North Carolina, I said, Todd, in your head, don't screw this up. The world is watching. Don't screw this up. And luckily, I was able to conjugate a subject and verb properly and ask Tiger about the win and the history and how meaningful it is, and asked him about, hey, you're the President's Cup captain. Are you thinking about making yourself a pick? He said, I think I've impressed the captain today, talking about himself. So it was a really incredible moment to be there and not screw it up.
Very cool. Now, tomorrow is a pretty big day in the courts, so we might, from what I've read, there's a good chance we might see some of these guys in the field. Taylor Gooch, Hudson Swafford, and you never know how the courts are going to swing this, but if they do, what do you think that reception is going to be like? How cold will it be when they enter the locker room, and will any of these guys play well if they actually get into the playoffs? Like, any thoughts there?
Well, I've been out on tour the last few months since LIV started their series. And hang on, my phone's ringing. Let me turn this off.
Sure, okay.
Oh, look, it's my producer for tomorrow. I've been out on tour since all of this started, and I would say if this is a graph chart as far as tension goes between LIV players and golf, it's steadily going like that. It really is. To hear Davis Love say what he said last week, in case your listeners don't know, Davis actually, Davis is first a powerful voice on the PGA Tour, considering he's Ryder Cup captain, multiple Ryder Cup captain, and now a President's Cup captain. So he when he speaks, people pay attention. But his pulse rate is always around 40. He's stoic. He's generally reserved. And for him to say, first off, our nuclear option is if the LIV guys come out and play, then we should strike. And secondly, I'm not having any of those LIV guys in my team room because they're selfish and they're for themselves. For those words to come from his mouth, just imagine what's rattling around people who are more active players on the PGA Tour than Davis Love III. If you think about it, their sense is, hey, you took your money at LIV. Okay, congratulations. It's a great payday for you. Well, what, you want to come back and out on the PGA Tour? Well, now you're taking my money.
Yeah.
So that's what they're thinking. And, friendships are going to be tested like crazy. So
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be great. And getting back to your point of Taylor Gooch and Hudson Swafford, and Matt Jones are allowed to come out and play in the FedEx Cup playoffs, I just don't see how comfortable they're going to be. I really don't. And so I usually that I don't know if that steers them in a more focused direction or not, but we'll see.
Well, they'll probably be subject to some heckles from fans. I mean, the crowd's really divided over this. But we shall see. I don't know what time that verdict is scheduled to drop tomorrow, but it's going to be big news when it does. And so hopefully it's not a sideshow. Really, at the end of the day, we've got the playoffs about to embark here, and it's a pretty exciting time in the PGA Tour. So we don't really need a sideshow at this moment.
Well, it's interesting. I am not a legal expert, but the PGA Tour gave their response to the LIV suit on Monday, which is today when we recorded this. And some interesting points came out of that that's going to make the judge think. I think more importantly that no one's really thinking about that the LIV Golf Tour is claiming that the PGA Tour is not allowing them to succeed. They've spent close to $1 billion already.
Right.
They are bragging about how great it is. So It sounds like to me they are succeeding.
Right.
So at least that's what they're saying. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting. I think ultimately not necessarily the temporary restraining or the TRO that's going to be decided tomorrow, but the longevity of this case and the other 8 players that are also part of this lawsuit. And I think the ultimate deciding factor is when a player signs a document that says I am a PGA Tour member and follows the laws in the PGA Tour player handbook. That's what that document says. Is that a contract or not?
Right.
I think that's ultimately what's going to be decided.
I think at the end of the day, they made this out to be an antitrust campaign, and so to try to push for the PGA Tour being a monopoly in some shape or form, and I think that's their route they're going for. But we'll see how it goes. But on a lighter note, Todd, we do like our audience to get to know you as well. Something we do on the show is talk about funny or embarrassing golf stories. Now, I want you to think a little bit, think back, maybe in broadcasting or in playing golf, or something happened to you that was really funny or embarrassing as a broadcaster or as a golfer. Now, we've had some crazy stories on this show from different players and different broadcasters. What's the first thing that comes to mind when I say funny and embarrassing?
Okay, I'll tell this story. I was at the Humana Challenge. That's what it was, the name of the tournament, the old Bob Hope in Palm Springs.
Yeah.
This was years ago. And Humana had just come on board as the title sponsor. And also coming on board as part of the tournament and part of the sponsorship was the Clinton Foundation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the Clinton Foundation, headed up by Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton, do a lot of charitable things around the world. And so I was invited by an executive of the tournament to come to a party. And so I said, okay, I feel like I've got to. And I show up at the party and I see these big 3 black Suburbans out in the front yard. Now, this was in a small house, about 3,000 square feet, not super small, but obviously it wasn't a big party space. It was in a house. Right. And so, I said, man, is President Clinton here? And so I walk in and there was a small gathering of about 40 people. And I look around and sure enough, there's President Bill Clinton. And the tournament director said, hey, ladies and gentlemen, we're so excited everyone's here. We are also excited to have Humana on as the title sponsor and to be aligned with the Clinton Foundation. As a matter of fact, President Clinton is still here. Mr. President, would you like to say a few things? And so he walks over and he says, hey, how y'all doing? I'm really having a great time. I love golf and I love the PGA Tour. And I love the players and I love their wives as well. As a matter of fact, one of the wives came up to me today and said, Mr. President, we have got to stop human trafficking in Asia. And I said, you're right, we've got to do that. And I don't know, I can't remember her name. She was so nice, but I'm drinking Grey Goose and I'm digressing. Y'all have a good night. And I'm like, holy cow. Now me being out on the PGA Tour, I know the players and their wives as well. And so I was like, wow, I think he's talking about Ben Crane, who unfortunately is not on the PGA Tour anymore, but a wonderful human. Yeah. And his wife Heather, both of them work for a charity that actually goes to Asia and pulls kids out of brothels. I mean, they're so devoted to this. So they're impressive people. And so I felt compelled to tell President Clinton that night that he spoke with Heather Crane. So an hour or so went by, and I'll never forget, I went over into the kitchen area where Mr. Clinton was, because I'm about to leave. And he's eyeball to eyeball with some guy, and I'm perpendicular to the right. And I just happen to hear, standing by the conversation, and I hear him say to this gentleman, you know, I've been the leader of the free world, but it doesn't matter to me. When she walks in the room, it immediately lightens up. She is the sun to my solar system. I love Chelsea. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's a sweet moment. He's talking about his daughter, how much he loves her. And then he catches me in his peripheral vision, and he looks at me and he says, son, do you have children? And I said, no, sir, Mr. President. My wife and I have been married just for a short time. And I said, but we're thinking of having kids. And like Moses Malone used to do with the Philadelphia 76ers, he threw an elbow to this guy, and he took his left hand and put it on my right shoulder, and his right hand and put it on my left shoulder. He says, son, I've been the president of the United States, but I have to tell you, quote, when little Chelsea popped out of Hillary's womb, I knew my meaning in life. And I'm looking at him like this, and I'm thinking, man, I am in a Saturday Night Live skit right now. And he's looking at me, and he's realizing I'm not picking up what he's putting down, and he starts to shake me. Son, you've got to have children. And when that happened, that looks like an engagement of violence.
Right.
So all these people with earpieces come and grab me and grab him and start pulling us away. And so his aide is there, and I'm like, hey, the story he's talking about, her name was Heather Crane, Ben Crane's wife. I leave. And the funniest thing was that I call my wife, and as I'm driving home, and I tell her the whole story. So you gotta be kidding me. I was like, babe, I think we just got an executive order to procreate. So fast forward a year ahead of time, a year later, and my wife and I were pregnant. And secondly, more importantly, the Clinton Foundation had aligned with Ben and Heather Crane's charity, and we're giving them money to help pull those kids out of brothels. So it was a fulfilling yet very entertaining and interesting
That's
ride.
That's great.
That's a hell of a story.
You might have another career as an impressionist, so that's pretty good.
Yeah, that's not bad.
Well, we should wrap it up, but we do have a few more questions for you. I guess, where are you off to next, and how can people get in touch with you on social media?
Well, I have a whirlwind week. Tomorrow morning, it's Monday. We're doing this Tuesday morning. I have a 7 a.m. flight out of Orlando to Memphis, where I immediately will land and start reporting on the ground of all the happenings involving the LIV lawsuit, which is going to be in California. And that I think the judge is going to hear that case at 4 p.m. Eastern time, 1 p.m. local time in California. So then we'll see what happens after that, and I'll be reporting. And then Wednesday, I'll get up in the morning, do some more reporting in Memphis. And then Wednesday afternoon, I jump on a flight from Memphis to Connecticut, where I'll be hosting Thursday through Monday Golf Central. So
awesome.
Yeah, so that's, I see a lot of airports.
Yeah,
that's awesome. It's a great career you've had. We've enjoyed watching you thoroughly. Keep up the great work. I know you probably don't hear it often from maybe your peers or other people because they're always busy, but a lot of people are rooting for you. You did a great job during the Olympics as well. So we're looking forward to seeing you again. Mike, any final questions or comments?
Yeah, my last question, in respect to Nick Faldo, Sir Nick Faldo retiring yesterday. Do you have one quick little nugget you could throw at us of your best Faldo story, and then we'll let you go.
Well, look, I actually, Nick is tied into the game much more than people know. I mean, he really is connected. And I actually went to dinner with him and some other colleagues, Colt Knows, Steve Sands, Greg Doblow, and myself. And this is getting back to LIV stuff. And you may have heard it now, but I hadn't heard it then. But he brought up a great point while we were having dinner. And he said, if you're Dustin Johnson, I'm just using him as an example. If you're Dustin Johnson and you've received $150 million or so just to play in these tournaments, and you're playing 54 hole events, and the average world ranking is about 430, why are you going to practice? You know, what's the point in that? Like, yeah. And so their games are going to go like that. And I was like, wow, you know, I didn't even think about that. It's like, where's the motivation? Because you're not eating what you kill when you play and live. You're given a Thanksgiving dinner right out of the gate. But hey, look, he's been an incredible voice for close to a decade and a half on CBS and worked with us on Golf Channel. You know, I feel like his broadcasting career is just about equal to his playing career, which is the Hall of Fame.
That's right.
So
Definitely.
He will be missed.
Definitely. Well, that's great. Thanks, Todd. Again, that was amazing for us to connect with you for a short period here, and best of luck this week and the rest of the summer. Hope to have you back in the future sometime.
Thank you. And then my one regret this year, and it's actually been a while, is the fact that I did not get to the RBC Canadian Open this year.
Amazing. We had a chance to cover it and had our media passes, so we're inside the ropes every day. Pretty incredible round with Rory playing and getting that second win, and Tony Finau right there, and Justin Thomas. It was awesome. It was really great.
Well, there are a couple of things I want to say about that event. Well, first, I had to go early because the U.S. Open was the following week, and NBC had that event, so I had to go in earlier. But the biggest thing was RBC is an incredible title sponsor. I've known them forever. They're wonderful, and the people of Canada. Oh man, they love golf. They're smart, fun, and love to have a good time. And whenever I can cross the border up north, I'm going to get there.
Awesome.
They're certainly hockey fans, and I had a chance to meet John Cook, and because he was on the show a week after the Canadian Open, so I introduced myself to him as he was walking inside the ropes, and so that was a wild experience. So thanks again for coming on. Pretty awesome, Todd. Thanks for your time. You've been listening to the Golf Podcast Live with Todd Lewis, Michael Bleackley. I'm Rafael Kalamat. Until next time, take care. See you guys.
Great. Thanks, Todd.
Thanks, guys. Have a great